150 years after the Norman conquest, England faced an equally profound crisis. In August 1217, with the wind and tide driving it forward, a French fleet of warships and transports was heading eastward down the English Channel from Calais. Comprising 80 vessels in total, the French Armada had been assembled by the notorious mercenary Eustace the Monk. Also on board the flagship was the French military commander Robert de Courtenay. Laden with troops and military supplies, their aim was to reach London. Here they would reinforce Prince Louis, son of the King of France, in his violent and controversial bid to become King of England. The stakes were high. If he succeeded, the two countries would effectively be united. History would record that England's independence had been lost. The crisis had begun when English King John had reneged on the Magna Carta he had sealed under duress at Runnymede in 1215. Many English barons rebelled against the unpopular king, sparking the First Barons' War. They decided to invite Prince Louis of France to come to England and take the crown. But after King John died of dysentery, most barons deserted Louis and turned to support John's son, the 9-year-old Henry III. The land war between Louis and the rebel barons was inconclusive. After his supporters were decisively defeated at an important battle in Lincoln and he failed to take Dover Castle, Louis retreated to London to await the arrival of the resupply convoy from France that could restore his fortunes. In the 13th century, the English government had no navy of its own. It relied principally on the ships of the Cinque Ports, towns along the southeast coast, of which Sandwich was one of the most important. In return for providing naval services, the ports had for generations enjoyed special legal and economic privileges. After negotiating a share of any plunder and agreeing on the replacement of lost ships by the government, the Cinque Ports were ready to take on the numerically superior French forces. The English were outnumbered about 2 to 1, but more of their ships were large, powerful vessels, and the French ships were heavily laden. Leading England was the regent to young Henry III, William Marshal. A celebrated soldier and famed participant in many tournaments, Marshal was known as the greatest knight in England. He was, however, too elderly to take part in the naval battle and too important to be captured. It was therefore Hubert de Burgh, successful defender of Dover Castle against Prince Louis's army, who took command of the English forces at sea. Once the French convoy was sighted, the English ships sailed forth from Sandwich. In a surprise maneuver, the English cut in behind the French fleet, thereby gaining the strategic upwind position. The experienced and battle-hardened Eustace the Monk advocated ignoring the English and continuing sailing on to London. But he was overruled by Robert de Courtenay, who ordered the French to turn about and attack the English. It was a fatal error. Seizing their opportunity, the English closed with the French warships. Taking advantage of the direction of the wind, they threw quicklime at the French, blinding and scalding all aboard. Archers and crossbowmen raked the enemy. Hauling alongside the French flagships and other vessels, the English leapt onto the French decks. Eustace the Monk was found and immediately decapitated. Robert de Courtenay was taken captive. Most of the fleet's ordinary French sailors, knights, and foot soldiers were either killed in the battle or drowned. High-value captives were held for ransom. Those French ships, still intact, turned tail and attempted to sail back to Calais. Many were captured or sunk. The battle over, the victorious men of the Cinque Ports paraded through Sandwich in stolen finery, holding aloft basins of French money. When word of the decisive loss of his resupply fleet reached Prince Louis in London, he immediately conceded defeat. Within weeks, peace was signed at Kingston-on-Thames. Prince Louis formally renounced his claims to the English crown in return for being allowed an unmolested departure from England. The young King Henry III could now look forward to a long reign as the undisputed King of England. The Spanish Armada and the Battle of Britain are better known in the popular imagination, but the Battle of Sandwich has a claim to an equally important place in English history. It is also well remembered in Sandwich. Some of the loot from the battle, which took place on St. Bartholomew's Day, was used to build a chapel to the saint and to provide financial support to the existing almshouses, which provided food and lodging for pilgrims en route to Thomas Becket's shrine in Canterbury. Almshouses and the original chapel still stand on the outskirts of Sandwich. To this very day, local school children commemorate the battle's anniversary with a race around the outside of the chapel, said to be the oldest ceremony of commemoration in the country. The children's reward, a free bun, is symbolic of the hospitality extended to travellers by this ancient institution.